Welcome to Marvel Vision, a podcast about Marvel, the MCU, and right now the season finale of What If. I'm Alex.
Yeah, I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And as you probably figured out from that brief intro there, we're going to be talking about episode 9 of season 1 of What If the Watcher broke his oath.
All been leading up to this.
This guy, he has an oath that he's going to break it? I did not see this coming. He's done watching.
It's wild, and not only that, he goes straight off the wagon this episode. He's like, he's like a guy who is like, well, I've never had ice cream, and then he has it one time, and he's just knee deep in Ben and Jerry's by the end of the episode. Is basically what's going on there.
This guy's interceding at a rate he would never have interceded at before. He's not a watcher anymore. He's an actor. He's the actor.
I appreciate your ice cream reference because Dairy Queen does get a shout out in this.
Sure, that's definitely a thing I noticed and processed.
Yeah,
and
actually, it's crazy. The only note I took was Dairy Queen for this whole episode. It's nuts. I guess that's just where my head's at. Me and Pete, the same.
Ice cream.
So I assume you listeners out there, the listeners, if you will.
Exactly.
Yes, that's the actual
watchers.
word for it. I was trying to do
watchers.
a pun, but yeah, thank you.
They're like watchers for ears.
Ear watchers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop.
I'm an ear watcher.
Excuse me.
Got him.
In any case, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it on Disney Plus because we're going to spoil the heck out of it. But as you probably figured out, all the threads come together in this episode, pretty much every single last one of them, including some, we'll get to this in a moment, that we didn't even get to see. But the Watcher and Strange Supreme bring together a team, a Guardians of the Multiverse, to fight against the souped-up Ultron with the Infinity Stones, who has been wrecking through the multiverse and destroying worlds and whole realities. Ultimately, spoiler, they're triumphant at the end. They stop Ultron. The Watcher goes back to being a Watcher. Strange Supreme is a Watcher in and of himself, as he is watching a bubble reality inside his bubble reality of Ultron and Arnim Zola fighting. And we get a little teaser at the end, a little post-credit sequence there, with Peggy Carter seeing the Hydra Stomper has been in storage, and maybe there's somebody inside. Could it be?
Maybe.
Just got choked up.
Jeff Bezos?
What?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Don't ruin that.
I don't know. He's very rich. He buys a lot of stuff. Maybe he's like, I want to sit in a Hydra Stomper. In any case,
good
Don't
guess.
fucking plug Jeff Bezos in the middle of our fucking thing, dude.
I get $50 every time that I do. And
Not worth it.
Eventually,
Not
it's
worth it.
This is his new big investment. He sort of stopped working at Amazon, so now he's like, I'm gonna give $50 to podcast guys.
Yeah, it's a real whisper campaign. Hey, I'm Jeff Bezos.
Because name recognition isn't working for him. He wants us to get the word out.
Regardless, before we get into plot points about the episode, I think it's worth talking about the series as a whole, or at least the season as a whole. So we've definitely been of different minds about different episodes, but how'd you feel about it now that you saw how it came together?
I really wish maybe they titled the whole thing what if the Watcher broke his oath, because it made it all worth it, but along the way I was pretty upset about the things that we had to be put through and the lows we had to see our heroes reach. So it would have been a little bit nicer to know that going in a little bit, that hey, you know what, we're not just going to torture you. We kind of it's part of a bigger picture that you can't see yet.
Yeah, you're the kind of guy when you get on a roller coaster, you're like, I'm gonna die here.
Yeah.
You're every high.
I'm calling my family, being like, I love you if I never see you again.
And then when you get to the end, you're like, oh, I did survive, just like all the people who rode right before me and all the people in line right after me.
That's right.
Because I have the sort of almost the opposite reaction, I think. I liked the ride. And this episode left me feeling like, okay. I feel like the whole series for me should have been titled, What If? Oh, that.
What?
Because it just, it brought this, we all knew this various threads. Right. And the fact that it was we're going to bring all the threads together, it felt like the threads came together almost as one might have guessed, almost as if we had talked about this very episode being like this, and then that's what it was.
Yeah, but also It's this premise of what would it take for the Watcher to get involved.
That's
what I mean?
always the premise. That's always the premise.
What do you
And
mean
he
that's always the premise? He's never really gotten involved before. He just sits there. This time he gets off his chair, stops making popcorn, and says, like, hey, I've got to really do something. Otherwise, all of everything is over. Every single possible universe. So I have to do something. And so, like, that's an interesting idea. Like, really, what would it take? And it's interesting the kind of things that would lead to that. So I was kind of impressed by it, but it also kind of makes you think about, like, the evil Stephen Strange. Like, if he didn't kind of start this, like, would it have all kind of fallen apart like this? So it's interesting.
Well, and like I like all these characters. Like the let's break them down. We've got Captain Carter.
Yes,
fun,
amazing.
She's fun.
The back and forth with Black Widow was really great.
The top, yeah,
and also throughout, not just at the top, but
well, there's a couple Black Widows that she talks to. There's the
sure,
one
but
from
either
her
one, a lot of great banter.
Yeah. Then we get our Star-Lord T'Challa.
The best Star-Lord of all time. I mean,
great Star-Lord.
Just unbelievable.
He got to do some cool stuff. Gamora didn't do a ton in here. Was great in the action sequences. Killmonger, who comes through and is like, ends up being sort of a villain.
I was like, why would you put Killmonger on the team? I was very excited to have Chadwick Boseman and Killmonger like talking and that kind of stuff, and just kind of enjoying those last characters while we could. But yeah, it was a crazy reveal that evil Doctor Strange figures out later, like, this is how it's supposed to go.
Well, sorry, maybe I'm repeating something here, but I do think I wanted a little
It was weird, Alex. I felt like you were a watcher for a section there, and you are just deciding to intercede because this conversation
to push Alex
exactly.
To
we pushed
something.
Alex over the edge.
That's it. I'm now an actor. Is that what
good? Congratulations! Please tread the boards.
I wanted a little more from the Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan thing, just because and this is expectations for the movies, but Black Panther is so good and their relationship is so interesting in there.
So amazing.
To have it be very brief in here and only be paid lip service to was not enough for me. I understand we're talking about a half-hour animated show, and I totally get it, and I get why it didn't happen, but to throw that in there and not have it pay off in a bigger way was a little bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, but better to have a little bit of something than nothing at all. But I agree, like, I could have...
That's what I think about ice cream.
Wow. I do think, though, that, like, I could have a whole spin-off series just the two of them, but I was happy for the little things. But can we talk about something that doesn't get talked about enough? Chadwick Boseman was hilarious in this. When the Beyonder like shows up, he's like, "Oh, come on, man, get a new trick." I lost it. I thought that was so funny.
Beyonder? Do you mean the Watcher?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Just making sure I didn't miss the Beyonder in there somewhere.
Sure.
But
yeah.
I think overall I liked this season. I feel like a broken record when I'm talking about the show at this point, but the action is always really good, and this was a action-heavy episode.
Beautifully drawn.
So,
yeah.
Given that you have one big action sequence essentially happening here, that was a lot of fun to watch.
And I feel like a broken Infinity Stone Crusher when I say this. Where the fuck did this Infinity Stone Crusher come from?
Yeah, exactly. How come we never seen that before? That seems super helpful.
So let's
Who made
talk
that?
about this.
That's a device you make and you're like, I don't know if I'll ever use it. It's like having a blender that only blends.
You go to Sharper Image and you're like, yeah, I guess I'll order it. I don't know, it's on sale or whatever. And then it sits in the basement for a while until you get Infinity Stones. You're like, oh, this is great, and you use it once and then rewrap it, regift it.
Can we circle back around to the comedy of this episode, though?
I do actually want to talk about the Infinity Stone Crusher because that's kind of a crucial thing, and I don't know 100% that this part is true, that it ties into this episode, but there was an episode that was left out of the season that they weren't able to complete because of COVID. That was the episode with Gamora, with that souped-up Tony Stark that we see very briefly, and it's something that's been pushed to season 2, so we will see that episode eventually. But my initial impression was they left off the Infinity Stone Crusher because if you knew that was coming, you'd be like, well, that's how they're going to solve this problem, is with the Infinity Stone Crusher.
Yes.
We've already seen that episode. But maybe it doesn't show up there. Maybe it doesn't actually play into that episode, or like it's a side note in that episode, because I can't imagine it's the focus, because that would have teed it up too much. But again, that's most likely where that thing came from and why it seemed to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it feels like that episode. Do we know the title of it? It has to be
Crusher,
something like,
I think it's
what
called
if
Crush.
No,
Tony Stark
Crushing
had
it.
an Infinity Stone Crusher.
What if Tony Stark owned Sharper Image? I feel like it's like, what if Gamora killed Thanos, or some kind of like bit about that, and you get all the ramifications there. But I agree, it had to be in that episode. The way they talked about it when it appeared there was like, look, this thing we always talk about. It's like, I don't remember all that.
What is going on?
Yeah.
What's the plan here?
It was fun to see Tony Stark be like, get kind of put in his place a little bit. Like, no, Tony, not you. I'm grabbing Gamora.
I did appreciate the different lights on that machine. I thought that was very nice and very helpful, because the Infinity Stone Crusher is covering Ultron's face there, but you get to see when it's crushed each of the Infinity Stones as it's gone around. So very helpful design.
I just hope in next season we get an Infinity Stone Crusher in case that thing gets out of control.
Oh,
What if somebody gets a crush on the Infinity Stone Crusher? What if?
Bill,
What if?
Wow. You really backed into that one.
Also, on that note, I have a question again, and this is me getting very niche and I don't know.
I knew this was coming. It's quibbling, I believe. A word
Quibbling.
you often
That's
use.
the word that I was looking at. Yeah. So Ultron says that the Infinity Stones work differently in every universe. So why do his Infinity Stones work in every universe exactly the same way?
I think this was something they put in here to speak to the quibblers out there.
Yeah.
Because I think they were like, we just need to cover this because we've set up a reality where this shouldn't be working. And let's just have a little line that sort of fritters away that problem. Because I agree with you. It doesn't make sense. I think we could have had a line like, I'll just turn this reality stone up a notch or whatever, and it'll work in any universe. Like, there's a way to explain it more directly. Instead, they sort of did a little legalese and got out of it.
It's a little frustrating and annoying just because it is this very weird plot hole that they keep punching on a little bit. Also, I'll emphasize, as I talked about in the last episode, it doesn't matter. Like, it ultimately, like, who cares as long as the episode is enjoyable? We have a robot wearing another robot flying around with magic stones. I'm not going to worry about it too much, but just in terms of explanation and keeping things consistent, that's something, let's be honest, the MCU does not do a whole lot of the time.
I would like to that magical robot does look like it was beaten by Magic Chef, which is also another robot. So that Stone
Magic
Crusher,
Chef?
yeah, looks like a Magic Chef a little bit.
Oh, the Infinity Stone Crusher.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
gotcha.
All right. Not Ultron.
Yeah.
I was like,
Ultron's not
Magic
Magic
Chef. I gotta say, Alex, when you say like a robot wearing another robot, do you think another robot would walk in and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It's like a human skin. If Alex had a human skin coat,
Yes, if.
Alex does. Yeah, I was going to say, Alex is not human.
I have said when I die that, Alex, you can have my skin.
Oh, thank you so much.
To make that coat you've so long coveted.
What was the
And
best
pants.
part, Pete doesn't know this, but Justin actually used the Buffalo Bill voice when he told me that. And he said, wear my skin.
Yeah.
I specifically, I moved out of the state so I could get like a different kind of preference. And my card, my driver's license, it's, donor except for Alex Albin. If he needs anything, no.
Oh, okay. But it does say we'll donate heart, kidneys, skin, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Skin. I'd like to donate my skin to science. I'm so sorry.
The amazing
Somebody
thing
has
about
to-
that is they got to be really careful when they're excising the heart or the kidneys. But with the skin, they got this machine that they just took you up to. It's like, and it sucks the whole thing off. In one piece.
Stop! That was the grossest. Stop.
Skinner, human Skinner.
Oh, come on, man.
Great stuff.
Skinner.
What if? Now, Pete, you said you wanted to talk about sort of the comedy side. of
Yes,
this,
please.
Which, again, I think I mentioned this before, feels a little weird. They don't have.
What are you talking about?
the Watcher sort of being a goof feels so weird to me.
Okay,
Like,
fine that, but Thor was hysterical in this. I really love that whole Las Vegas moment was hysterical. Did you see his tattoo? It's a microscope and it says science. That is hysterical.
that's fun.
That's
That was
from
a
the
callback.
previous episode. Yeah.
Yeah, which was fun. I'm
That's
here for
that's great.
it. Doctor Strange giving them a drink, which I thought was such a weird little
That
moment,
was
and
weird.
then having a bad toast. I was like, what is happening here?
But they stopped for Chinese food, which is very understandable. I mean, there's some crazy fun stuff happening here.
I know we've been harping on the same things all the time, but you've made this point several times, Justin, about them not really punching up the jokes enough. Not to punch up their jokes for them, but it felt like the structure of the joke is there a universe with the best Chinese food that we can get it from? Smash cut to, wow, this is the best Chinese food. But it didn't have that beat. It just cut to the Chinese food, which was weird.
Or even you could even to make your joke, which I think is good, into a reference, cut to them in the same setup as the shawarma scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Having that moment.
Totally.
Then it's like a nice little package that has an Easter egg element to it.
You love a tech package.
I do love that. And so I agree with you. It just felt a little, and if it was about the awkwardness of these people don't know each other, like, then that's funny. Like, oh God, this is weird, from different dimensions, not even from different cities, or like there's a way to get into like the dimensionality of it, which I thought could have been fun, because they sort of fell in all together pretty quickly, and the awkwardness was meant to be just a one-off joke, I think.
Well, once you have Chinese food with people, you know what I mean? Like, things are going to be a lot easier to get along. And also, like, speaking of the fun times, the sticky fingers, that was great. I think Chadwick Boseman underrated. I really thought the comedic timing that he had here was
okay.
really great.
I thought you were saying that Chadwick Boseman was underrated, which I don't think is true. But yes, very funny in the series. They definitely played him for laughs and let him do a lot of jokes here, which was nice.
There's this
Very
line.
enjoyable.
Very enjoyable. There is a line, all too easy, Ultron says. Was that a reference to the Darth Vader line?
Maybe?
All too easy? And then it felt like the exact same moment, all too easy, that Darth Vader says to Luke and then gets ruined.
Other positive thing that I'll say, Ross Marquand's voice for Ultron kind of bothered me in the last episode.
Yep.
I was surprisingly fine with it in this episode. Maybe it was just getting used to it. Yeah, potentially. Or maybe he got the hang of it a little bit more, or the lines were a little sharper, but it really worked for me here for whatever reason.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned it before, but just the action sequences, especially when we get into the big battle, I thought were just amazing. Like, it's a visual feast alone. We are complaining a lot, but like the hammer swarm, the Marvel zombies dropping in.
Yeah, dropping Marvel zombies was sick.
Super dope. And then in the ensuing fight, we focused this sort of quote unquote camera focused on Ultron and all the heroes smashing on him. I thought that was a great choice, made for such a visually different fight sequence. And the same when cutting back and forth to the Soul Stone that was sort of dropping around. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
you got to see the battle from a new perspective. Yeah, very cool.
Is it possible? I don't think this is true, but I'm going to throw out a wild theory about this that ties slightly into how they do animation. But is it possible that they almost did the series Marvel style? Meaning the Marvel technique, for those of you who don't know, this is not something every Marvel writer uses, but essentially what Stan Lee used to do, or reportedly used to do, is outline the story for an issue, send it to the artist would draw the entire thing, and then he'd go back and add the dialogue. And it almost feels like that's certainly something that does happen in certain ways in animation, where they will plan the whole thing out in advance. So it's possible that might point to some of the loose dialogue things we're talking about, where they have these action sequences, they have the whole thing mostly visually planned out, and they're not going back and tweaking the dialogue. They're writing the dialogue potentially later.
And I think a lot of animation actually works that way. If not sort of whole hog, let's write the dialogue later, but like, hey, here's the general idea. Let's tweak this as we're going.
I mean, I do love the idea of that, of like, let the kind of visual lead the way a little bit. And I think it's a smart way to do it. And speaking of animation, like you're talking about, why not just go right from comics to the animation in the Marvel flip? It just seems like it would be such a better idea and such a smoother draw from the audience into the story that they're telling.
At the family reunion we're having, you're being the uncle, Pete. This is when everyone steps away from you because we've heard you tell this story 100 times.
I know you mentioned this earlier, Pete, but I did want to shout out how good Haley Atwell is in this in particular. If nothing else, the series bringing us Captain Carter has been great. That is a great character. A little detail that I wanted to mention that was dropped online the other day, the composer for What If mentioned that what she did for Captain Carter's theme is she literally took the Captain America theme and reversed it, like took the notes and turned them backwards, because What If is all about inversion and flipping things on its head. So instead of having the dun 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 dun, it goes in the opposite direction for Captain Carter's theme, which I thought was really neat.
Wow.
But
I wish I knew how music works because that sounds
Yeah.
dope, but hard to execute. I didn't know you could just
Yeah.
be like, I'll just do it backwards. It still works.
Haley Atwell, great. Love the friendship, and I think you did mention this earlier, Pete, between Captain Carter and Black Widow, and I want to see
come
more
on.
of that
Yeah.
going forward. Not to jump forward to the vision board, but that was hands down my favorite part of the episode.
It was cool.
Yeah, it was really touching, and especially the kind of after credits thing was so moving. It was just this kind of, and also Doctor Strange had a moment with Peggy about like, how did you get here? And he was like you, love, and like such a kind of interesting. It was a small moment, but such a cool moment.
Did you think it was weird at all that when Black Widow ended up in this alternate dimension where their Black Widow died, she didn't encounter Hawkeye, she encountered Nick Fury? Because I feel like to tie up that emotional arc, it would need to be Clit, right?
I thought that too. I also thought, like, the Watcher's like, I can't believe I'm going to intercede. And he's like, yeah, and I'll also throw this Black Widow into this random universe. I was like, what? You can't do that, dude. It's fine if she doesn't want to. That's not. Plus, what is she going to say to everybody? Like, yeah, can I hang out here? Like, we don't know each other, but I know other. Like, it's just, I ask so many questions.
Yeah, it happens though. It's very comic booky, so it's okay. I agree with you about the Watcher thing, but also it gets to the core of what they wanted to do with the Watcher, which maybe is the sticking point for you and me, Justin, is this is not the Watcher from the comic books. They are taking the Watcher literally to mean a Marvel fan. Like, that is how they are writing him.
Right.
That's the dialogue.
AKA Jeffrey Wright.
Right, but this is the way in that they're giving is like that whole speech he gives about stories and how the stories are important and you are as much part of the stories as the heroes are and all of those things. That's what they're driving down on here versus the Watcher in the comic books, who is much more about a record keeper. I think he's not a fan. He's the guy who's like, well, I'm keeping the history of the universe. That's why I'm watching everything. Maybe. Hasn't been very specific about it. But here it's literally like he watches the stuff because he loves watching it. That's why.
Yeah.
He loves it.
He loves it. He's a creep.
Fucking loves it.
Do you think that maybe Black Widow didn't need to see Hawkeye at the end because she is now a Hawkeye? The way that she shoots the Zola arrow,
dude,
off of
right
a
in the
moving
eye.
motorcycle. That's a tough shot. It's a tough shot.
Well,
I'm
I mean,
glad-
Black Widow helped line it up. Why she was?
It does point out, why do you need both?
100%. I think that's the real lesson. We don't need a Hawkeye because we have a Black Widow eye.
I 100% agree. Before we wrap up here, we should move on to our vision board session. And I think for vision board, let's talk about season 2 of What If. We do have that teaser at the end. As we talked about before, we are going to get this Iron Man episode, Iron Man and Gamora episode in season 2. Presumably there's going to be more Captain Carter as well. But what do you want to see, Pete?
I just wanted to quickly say the kind of like hero being Zola was a fun twist also. I thought like that actor is such an amazing part of that role, and I'm so glad we got to kind of hear his voice take over Ultron. It was very satisfying. But as far as looking forward, I want to pick up right where we left off, and I want to see Steve and Peggy get together. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
What if we just kissed all the whole time? Is what you want to see.
What about you, Justin? What's on your vision board for season 2?
I want to see sort of bigger swings with the individual episodes, and I feel like the impulse is going to be, like Pete's saying, let's pick up where we left off. Let's make sure we include all these characters again and build toward another storyline, maybe even featuring a powered up Ultron. And I hope they don't do that. I want them to leave all of this behind. Maybe we can see the Strange Supreme still holding onto this crystal ball every now and again. But otherwise, I think let's move into whole new stories, whole new universes, and really shake it up a little bit more.
That was rough, though. That was like, hey, evil Stephen Strange, we know you're heartbroken, but just hold on to this crystal ball forever and make sure they fight for eternity, okay?
Well, eventually he just puts it on a shelf and just is like, hey, when he has people over, like, don't touch it.
Yeah, but if that falls off,
that's a ball of evil. Don't touch that. The big thing
but eventually it's going to be holding up his sofa. He's like, oh, shit, I need a little thing to jam in here.
The big thing that I want to see is in line with what you were saying, Justin, which I was not put off is probably too strong, but I was bummed out when they started with straight up Winter Soldier with Captain Carter right at the beginning of the episode. I don't want to see an episode that is the Winter Soldier, but with Steve instead of Bucky. Like, that is not interesting to me. I want to see them take that story. I want to watch the Captain Carter stuff more because, like you, Pete, I was surprisingly emotionally affected by that post-credit sequence. But I want to see them taken in a totally new direction. Give us a totally new story. You have limitless stories in this universe. Why keep telling the same ones over and over again,
100%.
All right, folks, that is it for What If. Yes,
I just wanted to say, I'm surprised you don't want, like, in the next season, them to sit us down and kind of, like, explain how each universe works and how the Infinity Stones can travel through the universe and work. I feel like that's what you want.
Yeah. What if we didn't keep messing up everything so much? That's the episode that I want to see.
Wow.
But, Pete, I know you're making fun of Alex, but when Strange Supreme opened his amulet and had the time stone, I was like, this is weird. These stones. You can't have these stones together.
Yeah, you can't have these stones together. Again, they established in Loki that, like, the stones don't seem to work outside of universes. I don't know. It's fine. Let's not worry about it. It's all good. What If is over for now. We will be back with Hawkeye in November, maybe a couple of episodes between now and then as well. But in the meantime, if you'd like to support the podcast, patreon.com/comicbookclub. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Crowdcast and YouTube, iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe, listen, and follow the show at Marvel Vision Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, stay marvelous.
What if Alex wore both of our skins?